everyone, it's Priya here, and in today's video I'm going to be drawing and painting a building, which is something I haven't done for a while. And I'm going to be focusing on lines, shapes and perspective, because those are the key components of a building and you need to pay close attention to that. I am using a royalty-free reference photo from Pixabay for this illustration, and you can draw any building a photo that you have or something that captures your eyes. Try to draw that and really study it and then try to capture what you see. That's basically what we're doing here. And I'm just paying attention to the shapes I see, the lines. Now with the lines, you can use a ruler if you feel that you want the lines more straight. You can freehand it. It's up to you which one you prefer. I am freehanding it and I'm just gonna go with it. This drawing is not perfect, and buildings are something that you really have to pay attention to them. So when I look at a reference photo, like this reference photo, the building was in the distance and then there's other buildings around it, and it's in the far distance with foliage around it and things like that. I just zoomed in and I focused on this building. It's not the entire building, it's just the upper portion, and I wanted to just capture it because it caught my eye because of the style, design, the architecture. That's what caught my eye and my attention. And usually if I'm watching TV or if I'm driving by buildings or if I'm seeing reference photos, anyway, if I see a building that really captures my eye, it makes me want to paint it and draw it, because there's a lot of intricate details that you have in these buildings. It's not just a straightforward plain building with just windows and roof and walls. It is a building that has got a lot of detail in it. Not to say that buildings that are just regular buildings are not interesting to draw, but these are really, these are older buildings which has got these really in-depth detail, which have got this architecture, which you don't see a lot of these nowadays buildings with this architecture. We have more buildings with a lot of glass these days, and these are the original buildings that have been maybe over decades have been around, and they are stonework and there's a lot of design in them as well. And you'll see when I go in with the inking portion, you'll see all the design elements coming through. There's even little clocks, like I believe this is a clock tower, most likely. I'm not sure. On the reference photo it just said Switzerland, so I'm assuming this is a building in Switzerland. I'm not sure. Let me know if you recognize it, but I just am drawing what I see, and I'm just I was just it caught my attention, so I wanted to capture it. So I want to share with you that when you're drawing buildings, that you really need to pay attention to the line work, the perspective, because especially a building, to make it look three-dimensional, look at the angle that the building is being filmed at, as well as paying attention to the shapes that you see, because a lot of these shapes are not just straight lines, they are curves, they are circular areas. Like this tower has got clocks on it, so there is a round element for circles which you need to consider. There are a lot of triangular elements as well, angled lines. So you'll see now I'm going in with a fine liner. Now bear in mind, if you are ever going to use watercolor over your drawing, your ink drawing, make sure that the ink that you're using is waterproof. Now I am using the Pigma Microns, so I know this is not going to smudge once I go over it with watercolor. So you can see I'm going in and I'm just outlining everything that I have drawn. Sometimes while you are drawing, you may notice certain things that are not correct from your initial sketch, and you can just go in and correct that now once you are doing the inking. Remember, it doesn't have to be perfect. This is not perfect, and I know this drawing has got a lot of errors in it, and there's things that I would improve if I were to draw it again. But that's the thing about drawing buildings. It's just for you to learn and practice and get used to drawing them. I drew quite a few buildings, but I haven't been drawing them lately a lot. So it was really exciting for me to get back into drawing some buildings and, just getting that, that architecture in, and that historic feel for what the buildings used to be built like, and, the detail that it has on it. Because buildings are not just straightforward. They've got a lot of detail, especially these stone buildings and these ancient buildings that are so old. They've got a lot of detail in them, and it doesn't have to be perfect. You can see my lines are not perfect on those little rectangles I put in there, but I still am having the impression of what the building looks like, and that's what you can try to capture. If you don't, you won't get every single detail into your final drawing. Maybe you can do it, but I know there's a lot of buildings I don't have every single detail in it, or I have to simplify what I see, because sometimes what you see in the building as it is, it may be too complex to put onto paper, and it's going to actually not be able to be read properly by viewers. If someone views your art, it'll look very messy because it's too much going on. Because in our view, in reality or in a photograph, it looks perfect, but when we try to draw that image, if it's too busy, it can come across as being too messy, and it doesn't look like it's drawn correctly. So that's when you take your artist's liberty and just, simplify things that can be simplified, and just to give the impression of what you want to create. Like this building has got a lot of different line work in it, and has got a lot of details that I have not included in the final drawing because it will just look too busy, and sometimes that takes away the attention from what you're actually trying to portray with the building, and it looks too messy. So I would highly recommend that you do a limited amount of detail on very detailed buildings. Don't try to replicate every single thing you see, because just replicate the most important elements. If you try to replicate everything, it can look messy, especially when you're trying to do it in a drawing form. When you are looking at a photograph or looking at it in reality, it may be fine, but in a drawing, there are certain things when you do artwork and drawings of them that it just doesn't look too good as a drawing, and it becomes very messy and busy and not in a good way, and it takes away from your overall look of the image that you're creating. So you can see I am adding details. I have added some of the little details in there. I'm not leaving out everything, but I'm also trying to keep everything very simple as well, because I am going to go over with color, and I am going in, and as I'm going through it and adding in shadows, adding in some of the finer details to areas that I need to darken areas. That's the areas in shadow. It just to keep it that you can understand what's going on, and you're not going to get lost, and the viewer's not going to get lost in trying to see what you were trying to do. So that's what I'm trying to accomplish here, and as well as drawing in all the brickwork that's on the tower as well, on the building. So I'm just paying attention. Now, I'm not going to count exactly how many. And this is an example. Like, I'm not going to count every single brick that's on the building and put every single brick on the drawing. You by all means can do that if you want to do that, but I'm choosing not to do that because I think that's going to be just too tedious to do, and I will take forever to do this drawing, and I will never get completed in time. So I rather just give the impression of, okay, this area is the stone area, this area has brickwork, whatever it is. And that's just a simple example of what you can do to show that this area is, okay, this is brick, this is stone, just so that you have an idea of what the building is looking like and made of, and it also translates to your drawing and to the viewers viewing your artwork at what you're trying to represent. So bear that in mind. And also remember, this drawing, as I said, pay attention to your lines, pay attention to the angles. When you're working in a book or on a page, make sure that it's aligned to your page and you're not going at the angle, so that the line work is slanting, or the building is slanting, because that does come across, and very easily when you're looking at a solid building like this, you will see that the building looks like it's slanting. And it may be perfect in all respects, but if it's slanting, it does, the viewers notice that very quickly. So just bear that in mind when you are doing your drawing and your illustrations. Now you can see I am going in and adding the brickwork. I'm adding little details of the bricks. Like I said, it looks like I'm adding a lot of brickwork here, but I'm just giving the impression of it. There may be far more bricks than this what I'm putting onto this illustration on the actual photo that I'm using for the building, but I'm trying not to make it too busy, although it has got detail, because I want this to look quite realistic and have as much detail as I can possibly put on there, but at the same time I don't want it to look messy. So you need to find the fine balance between having detail but not making your image look or your drawing look busy and messy. It can look busy and it can look interesting and have detail, but if it's too busy, and it can start looking messy. So you just need to see where to draw the line and make sure that it's not getting to that stage. Now I'm just erasing everything. Make sure that the inking is dry before you erase everything, otherwise you're going to have a lot of smudging. So once I've inked that, I'm starting to add color. Now this building has got a greenish color for the roof, so I went down, added some water to that area, and then I'm going to use the apply the watercolor. So I'm using the wet in wet technique for this part. So you can see it's like a bluish greenish color. So I'm just adding the color. Also remember your reference photos. If you're painting something from reality or from real life, if you're painting it, you will notice that certain areas or certain angles will cause colors to look different. So you may look at something, the sun is hitting it in certain areas and it looks more green, and then if you look at it in the shadow areas, it looks more blue. So just pay attention to that as well, because that can also impact on what your building color will look like, as well as what color the stone work will look like, what color the bricks will look like. It may change because of the lighting. And also, if you're using a photograph, the photograph may represent what you're seeing, and you may see it looking like a bluish hint of green tone, but in reality it may be more brighter. So bear that in mind as well. So now I'm going in and painting all the windows. Now the windows look completely blacked out. You can't see anything inside. Obviously this building is in the distance, it's far away. I just went in and painted everything in with a darker gray, just so that covering up all those window areas. And then after that I'm going to start working on the rest of the building. Also, depending on the angle or the direction of the sun and where it's coming from, and the angle that the sun is hitting the building, that will determine your shadows and where the shadows will fall. Because you will have, with this kind of a building, there's a lot of shadow areas where there's certain parts of the brickwork that's overlapping. So where it overlaps, there will be shadow areas. So you need to really study your building that you're looking at, or a reference photo or photograph, whatever you're looking at to draw from. You need to really study it to make sure that you pay attention to where those shadow areas are and where the light is coming from. Like all drawings and paintings, you need to pay attention to where the light is coming from, because that will determine where your shadows are. And only once you can determine where the lighter areas are, you'll be able to put the darker area, paint in the darker areas, which are your shadow areas or areas in shadow, which will help you to create a more realistic three-dimensional image, and it won't look too flat. It'll actually look like a building that has like different sides. Like this is a building that's photographed from the angle. You can see the two sides to it. So we want to incorporate those two sides, but also remember that it has shadows and it has cast shadows from the sunlight as well. So there'll be lighter areas where the sun is hitting the building, and then the areas that will be a little darker because they are in shadow. So remember that also when you are painting and drawing anything. It can be any subject matter, not only for buildings, but anything you draw, you need to pay attention to the lighting, and you must make sure that you concentrate on where the light's coming from, where it's hitting the object or subject that you're painting, where are the shadows, and make sure that you keep the shadows as dark as possible and keep the light areas as light as possible, because that'll really help to make your image look more three-dimensional and make it look more realistic. So you can see I'm painting in areas. You can see I had a lot of detail in areas. Now if I go too dark on certain areas, it's gonna take away some of that detailed line work that I've done. You can go in and go over those areas again later on, but that's when you start to make the drawing look very messy and it looks like it's overworked. Because that's another thing to remember, don't overwork your pieces. Because especially when it comes to a detailed piece or an object or subject that's very detailed, you need to know when to stop drawing or when to stop trying to add more to the image, because there is, as I said, there's artist liberty we have, that we can leave out certain things or we can stop before it gets too busy. It may be having far more detail than what we're seeing, but adding all those details are going to make the image look very messy, and it's going to actually deter from our aim of what we're trying to achieve with the artwork that we're trying to create. Now I'm adding watercolor layers on, and I am also adding in some different browns into those wet layers, just so that you have that difference in the stonework or the brickwork, because all of those stones and bricks are not identical. This is not a it's not a modern building, so it has got certain areas that have got aged over time, or maybe the way they were made, the bricks that were made, they have different colors. So you need to consider all of that as you going through the painting and drawing process. Try not to work on every brick, like try to get every single brick's detail, or see, one brick has got a bit of darker parts on this side, and then on the left side, and then the other side's lighter. If you do that for every brick, you will be painting for a long time. And if you want to make a hyper realistic drawing, then you by all means can do that, and that's perfectly fine. But I just feel that it'll make the image too busy, and it's also gonna, I'm gonna overwork the piece. And also remember, if you're drawing or painting buildings, if you're gonna paint them, try to use different brushes, especially round brushes, and try to have them in different sizes, because you will have some details that you need to add for them when you are working with the paint, like watercolors that I'm using here. So I guess that's it for this video. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed it. I hope you found it helpful. If you have, don't forget to like and share. It really helps the channel out. Feel free to leave your comments down below. And if you'd like to see other art videos and art content that I put up on my channel, then you could consider subscribing. Don't forget to hit the notification bell so that you are notified as soon as my next video goes up. Thanks again for watching. Bye.